Hey everybody, welcome to another comic book review. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Mazebook by Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire is a cartoonist that I really respect. He's also a cartoonist that I have some flaws with in most of his books. He's great, he's fantastic, and I really like pretty much everything I've read from him. The only book that I would consider he's written that I would consider to be absolutely flawless and perfect is Essex County. All the other ones have like little flaws here and there that it kind of bugs me. And Mazebook is one of those books that I was like, I really, really hope that it's like really another fantastic book and not like a book that just falls ever so slightly short of being like as much of a masterpiece as Essex County was. And this book, it's interesting because at first, I thought that there were some continuity errors like there are in some of his other books. And then the more I read into it, this book does something interesting, and I'm going to talk about that. So basically, the book follows a building inspector named Will Warren. This is him right here. He lost his daughter, and ever since his daughter's death, he just has not been the same. He recently divorced from his wife as well, and she has kind of seemingly moved on from the whole event. He has not at all. And this book deals a lot with grief and kind of overcoming it and finding purpose through grief. And it's really interesting. Basically, what ends up happening at the start is in the wee hours of the morning, Will receives a call on his cell phone from somebody claiming to be his daughter, saying that she's trapped in a maze and she's in the center, and Will has to go and find her. Now, the thing about his daughter is she loved playing with mazes, and she had all these maze books that she would do, especially when it came closer and closer to her death. You know, whenever she was in the hospital, she would do endless maze books just for hours and hours on end. And Will would run to all the stores in the area and get as many maze books for her as he could. So whenever he receives a call from her, he originally is kind of skeptical until she mentions that she's in a maze and she's in the center of this maze. And he's like, oh my gosh, nobody else knew that my daughter was into mazes the way I did. And so he's like, it has to be my daughter. So he goes on this big quest to find his daughter, and that's kind of what you get in this book. Him kind of searching through the city in this almost maze-like sort of setting, trying to find his daughter, and he uses the string from her red sweater as sort of a way to guide him. Now, as I've been flipping through this book, you can see a lot of it is just sort of like one color or like shades of one color, and then like there will be kind of a burst of red here or there, like this, you know, the red string from the sweater. The color is very minimal in this book, and that's something that Lemire has done before in books like Roughneck. Roughneck did that, and I don't know if it had as great of an effect as it did in Roughneck. I mean, I don't know if Roughneck did it as well as Mazebook did it. Mazebook does it pretty well, where it balances color and black and white pretty well. Visually, this book is very nice to look at. The art is typical Jeff Lemire, scratchy, kind of scribbly art, which I really, really like Jeff Lemire's art style. I think it's very cool. It's messy, it's scratchy, it's scribbly, but there's a charm to it that I really, really like. It kind of fits really well with indie comics and a lot of the ambitious stories that he tells. Um, One thing I particularly love about the visuals in this book um, is there's a segment in, I think it's the fourth chapter, where uh, Will is walking through the maze, and it kind of follows these weird kind of patterns here. And then when you turn the page, it picks up and it goes in this line here, and it carries on like that for like a good portion. And so you're kind of tracing like along the maze with the main character and kind of seeing where he goes, and it's awesome. That's something that I thought was really, really clever. That's Jeff Lemire is kind of known for doing that kind of stuff. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Jeff Lemire has like some continuity errors in a lot of his books that kind of bug me. And it's like everything else is done so well in his books, and there's usually almost always like one or two little things like in the form of continuity errors that kind of just prevent it from being like truly fantastic, you know? In this book, I was like, I don't know, like, is it gonna do it again? And I was legitimately kind of frustrated whenever it seemed to be that there was a pretty glaring plot hole in the middle of this thing. And then as it goes along, like I said, Lemire does something very interesting with this book. And I mean, I don't know. I think it could be unintentional, but it really worked for the story. Even if it was unintentional, it really, really worked. There's a specific instance where whenever he receives that first call from his daughter on his cell phone, it says that it is 3:15 in the morning on his phone. And whenever he gets that call like 2 nights in a row, and on the third night he says, because see here it says 3:15 in the morning, and on that third night, you know, he says something about she's called for the past 2 nights at 3:12 in the morning on the dot. And I'm looking back, I'm like, it was not 3:12, it was 3:15. Now, that frustrated me at first because there's usually always something like that in Jeff Lemire's work. But this one, it makes sense because, like I said, at first it frustrated me. And then I looked at the bigger picture of the story and how it's all about how somebody is processing grief. Somebody is dealing with the death of his daughter and trying to process that. And it deals with how his brain kind of gets a little bit scrambled over the course of this book. And then I look back at that and I'm like, maybe that was intentional. Because looking at it from that perspective, it really kind of makes the story more interesting. And there's other things like that throughout this book that I don't really want to spoil, but there's other little things like that that I don't think it was a coincidence. And even if it was, it's a pretty brilliant little coincidence. So that's why, I mean, I really appreciate this book because even if the mistake was unintentional, it really, really works for the story. Unlike some of Lemire's other books that have like continuity errors here and there. The only other book that I've read from Lemire that doesn't have any continuity errors in it is Essex County. And I've said before, I think that book is absolutely perfect. Is Mazebook a perfect book? Not a perfect book, but it might be the best book that I've read of his since Essex County. I think Essex County is still my favorite of his works. I honestly don't know if anything will ever top that book for me, because I think it's a brilliant book, but Mazebook is very close. In terms of Jeff Lemire books, like none of his books are bad. I've liked all of the books I've read from Jeff Lemire, But Mazebook might be my favorite one of his after Essex County, which I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. Mazebook is definitely one that I would totally recommend. I blew through it in around a half hour. It's a very quick read. And also, if you get the hardcover edition, very, very beautifully put together book. The binding is excellent. It's got this beautiful cover, and I don't know if this camera will do it justice, but you can see there's like these shiny kind of like, there's like a maze here, and it kind of like shines in the light. Yeah, I don't think this camera is going to do it justice, but cover is super, super detailed, as is all of the visual components on the inside. The art is very detailed. This is Lemire doing what he does best, and I can't wait to read what he does next. As always, thank you for watching. Look forward to more videos in the future, and have a wonderful day.